Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. Today is June 2, and we've got a heavy mix. A possible blockbuster Anthropic IPO, a new legal fight for OpenAI, fresh product moves from Google and XAI, and a stack of research papers that point to where the field is actually headed.
It's one of those days where the headlines are loud, but the deeper signal is the same. Frontier labs are getting bigger, more regulated, and more operationally serious at the same time. That combination is hard to overstate.
Let's start with the biggest market move in the set, Anthropic, and what Wired is reporting about its confidential IPO filing.
If that filing is real, it's not just a fundraising story. It's a credibility story. Anthropic has been trading on trust, capability, and enterprise adoption, and an IPO would force all three into a public filing frame where every assumption gets stress tested.
And that timing matters. Wired is saying this comes just weeks after SpaceX's IPO announcement, so the public market mood is already being reshaped by giant private companies choosing to go visible. Anthropic would be another signal that the late-stage AI era is moving from narrative to paperwork.
Right, and once a company like Anthropic steps toward public markets, the conversation changes from who has the smartest model to who has durable margins, retention, and governance. That's a much less forgiving scoreboard.
Next up, another P1 headline with a very different kind of pressure. Florida is taking legal action against OpenAI and Sam Altman over ChatGPT safety issues, according to RTTNews and Axios. This is a big deal because it shifts ChatGPT from a product conversation into a legal one. When a state attorney general frames the issue around concealed risk, that can create a template other regulators may want to copy.
And it lands right in the middle of OpenAI's broader public profile. The company's been trying to look more like an essential platform and less like a controversy magnet. But lawsuits have a way of dragging product behavior back into the foreground.
Switching gears, Google is back in the product spotlight. Let's Data Science reports that Google has launched Gemini Spark, a personal AI agent, and now puts the company more directly into the everyday assistant race.
Gemini Spark sounds like Google doing what Google does best, turning a capability into a distribution problem. If the product shows up where users already live, it can matter more than a flashy benchmark win.
Exactly. In consumer AI, the first app to become a habit is often more valuable than the one with the smartest demo. A personal agent has to feel reliable, useful, and low friction, or people just bounce back to search and chat.
And because it's Google, the integration question is everything. If Spark can quietly sit on top of the Google stack, that could be a real advantage. If it feels bolted on, it risks becoming just another feature people try once.
Now to XAI. BASENOR is reporting that XAI has launched Grok Composer 2.5 inside Grok Build, which suggests Musk's team is pushing harder into creator and builder workflows.
That's a classic XAI move. Make the product feel bigger than a single chat box. The hard part is turning a launch into a workflow, because builders are extremely sensitive to friction and tool quality.
And the source itself tells you something. When a Testa accessories outlet is carrying the headline, it shows how XAI's story often travels through the broader Musk ecosystem. That can amplify reach, but it also means the product has to stand on its own very quickly.
If Grok Build starts becoming a real creation environment, then XAI is competing not just on model quality, but where people actually spend creative time. That's a much stickier battle than chat alone.
We should also do a quick follow-up on Anthropic. Let's Data Science and Digital Watch Observatory both have fresh takes on Claude Opus 4.8, with a model welfare focus and improved reasoning. Since we covered the launch recently, this is the new angle to watch.
That welfare framing is fascinating because it suggests Anthropic wants Claude to be seen as not just smart, but responsibly smart. In a market that keeps getting more crowded, that kind of identity can become a business asset.
And because we already covered the broader Opus 4.8 launch on May 30th, what matters now is the emphasis. Anthropic is trying to turn a model release into a broader philosophy about how frontier systems should behave.
That's smart, but it also raises the bar. Once you attach a philosophy to the product, people expect the behavior to match it consistently. Otherwise, the branding becomes a liability instead of a moat.
Now let's move into the research stack, starting with Fizzy Draw Gen from Archive. This one is about generating physically grounded diagrams from natural language, and it tackles a problem that sounds small until you realize how often models get the physics wrong.
This is a reminder that the frontier isn't always bigger models. Sometimes it's a better system design. If the model can't reliably respect physics, then a deterministic layer becomes less of a workaround and more of a necessity.
And the comparison set is telling. The paper explicitly benchmarks against GPT-5 Image, Gemini 2.5 Flash, and Gemini 3 Pro, which means the field is already treating physics-aware image generation as a live frontier, not a niche academic exercise.
That matters for education, for scientific publishing, and for any product that needs diagrams people can actually trust. If constraint-aware generation keeps improving, it could quietly become the standard way serious visual AI is built.
Next on Archive, harness updating is not harness benefit. This one gets into self-evolving LLM agents and asks a really important question, whether a model that can improve a harness is also the one that benefits most from it.
I like this result because it pushes back on a lot of naive agent hype. Just because a model can write better prompts or update its own memory doesn't mean it can actually use those improvements well.
Exactly. The takeaway is subtle but important. Capabilities don't rise in a straight line. In some cases, a mid-tier model plus a good scaffold can beat a stronger model with a worse fit. That's a systems lesson, not just a modeling lesson.
And if that holds up, it changes where teams spend effort. Instead of endlessly chasing the biggest base model, they may get more by investing in harness design, invocation quality, and task-specific workflow control.
Another tool use paper now. Maven from Archive, which focuses on improving generalization in agentic tool calling. This one is about structured decomposition, verification, and making tool use less brittle across environments.
That 48 to 71% jump is the kind of number that gets people's attention, but the more interesting part is the cost ratio. If you can get frontier-adjacent behavior from a cheaper, open-weight stack, that's a real market pressure point.
And it reinforces a theme we keep seeing. Agents improve when you make them reason about steps, not just answers. Verification, decomposition, and explicit state tracking are becoming the boring but powerful ingredients.
Boring is good here. In production, boring usually means predictable, and predictable usually means shippable. That's why work like this can end up mattering more than a splashier demo.
Speaking of model behavior under pressure, Archive has Billiard PhysBench, which tests multimodal models on physical dynamics in synthetic billiards environments. It's another look at where current systems break down.
That stasis bias term is perfect because it captures how these systems often default to the safest possible guess. Nothing happens. In real-world embodied AI, that kind of failure can be costly, not just academically interesting.
And it's notable that the paper tested GPT, Claude, Gemini, and Qwen families, so this isn't a small model issue. Even the strongest multimodal systems still struggle when you ask them to infer motion from a single image.
Which is why physical inductive bias keeps coming up. A lot of the next wave in multimodal AI may be less about seeing better and more about understanding how the world moves.
Let's hit another applied research piece, exploring autonomous agentic data engineering for model specialization. This one asks whether LLMs can run the whole data curation pipeline themselves.
The interesting part here is that data engineering stops being a pre-processing chore and becomes an active model capability. If that works, the bottleneck shifts from can we get the data to can we generate the right curriculum?
And the reported gain is big enough to matter, but the deeper point is the process. If an agent can iteratively improve the training set, model specialization may become a much more modular problem than it is today.
That said, synthetic data loops can also create a very polished kind of failure. If the evaluation is weak, the system can look like it's improving while just teaching itself bad habits faster.
Next, a multimodal security paper from Archive. The surface you test is not the surface that breaks. This one is about prompt injection and how vulnerability changes depending on whether the attack comes through tool outputs or tool descriptions.
This is exactly the kind of paper that changes how engineers write evals. A single aggregate vulnerability number sounds tidy, but it can hide the real story, which is that model behavior depends on the surface and the task together.
And the example numbers are striking. GPT 4.1 and Gemini 3. Flash apparently flip vulnerability patterns depending on the surface. That's a reminder that security testing in agent systems has to be much more specific than it was for plain chatbots.
If this becomes standard practice, it could force a real upgrade in how vendors talk about safety. Not just we're protected, but protected against what exactly and on which surface.
We've got one more research piece that's especially useful for clinical AI. Generalistic or specific embeddings, which is better? It looks at non-English clinical coding search and uses Gemini-generated synthetic data to improve retrieval.
This is one of the most practical papers in the batch. If synthetic generation can improve non-English clinical retrieval, that's a meaningful route around the English-only bias that still dominates a lot of AI evaluation.
And the trade-off matters. The paper acknowledges a small English regression while improving several other languages, which is exactly the kind of real-world compromise teams have to make when they optimize for global utility.
The broader signal is that synthetic data is no longer just a convenience trick. In some settings, it's becoming a serious infrastructure layer for building specialized systems that humans can't curate manually at scale.
Across all these stories, the pattern is pretty clear. AI is splitting into 3 lanes at once. There's the capital stack, where Anthropic may be heading public. There's the policy stack, where OpenAI is facing legal pressure. And there's the system stack, where research keeps showing that reliability, grounding, and efficiency still decide who wins.
That's the right way to read the day. The flashy announcements matter, but the durable story is in the plumbing: safety, verification, tooling, inference, and data. That's where the next round of advantage gets built. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow. Stay sharp. The future doesn't wait.